So, hello everybody. So good to see you all. We saw a very, very startling headline that I know startled us and I think should startle everybody. And we thought we would discuss that. I actually don't
It's
know.
about relationships. It's about broken relationships.
And it seems that there is quite the spike in divorces.
And that's why we wanted to present this show to you, which we decided to call From Frustrated to Fixated. Secrets to healthy relationships. Because relationships don't come easily. Relationships are a lot of work. They take courage, humility, and wisdom. Relationships are like a garden. That's the blessing that we bless the bride and groom under the chuppah, that they should be like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, because just like a garden takes a lot of work, a lot of sweat and toil and energy and money in order to make it work. The same thing is with relationships. They take a lot of effort.
There are certain tricks that we can implement in our relationships that actually kind of take the work out of it. It doesn't even feel like work.
But we have to be realistic about how difficult it is, though.
It doesn't have to be difficult. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't know if I would say difficult. Is it difficult to have a relationship with somebody you love? I think that if you knew how to relate to them, and if you knew these specific strategies that we're going to be talking about today, then I wouldn't call it difficult. I don't think that it's actually hard at all.
Well, Hannah, I think I want to respectfully disagree with you. And I want to say that sometimes you're just not in the same wavelength as the person that you're married to. You know, you mean one thing, they heard something else. I mean, in the marriages that I counsel, I don't know about you, but sometimes there's two people. There are two different planets, two different solar systems.
Okay, so it's a matter of understanding each other, and of course we're going to go into the details now. But it's a matter of understanding each other. Is that difficult? I don't know if it's difficult. It's a matter of taking a moment and saying, okay, there's some communication blockage here. You're not understanding. But it's more than that. I think it's more understanding the other person and not getting upset about it. Like an example that I often give is how, my father always brought flowers to my mother every single Friday, right? And I love talking about this example because I think that it's very practical that I think people can relate to this. That I grew up seeing my father bringing my mother flowers every single Friday. And I expected the same. I expected I'm going to get married, and that's what husbands do. They bring their wives flowers. Lo and behold, my husband did not bring me flowers for a very long time, and it would upset me. And then I realized, I remember this one day realization where I said to myself, it's not because he doesn't love me. He's not bringing me flowers because he doesn't love me. He's not bringing me flowers because he gets very focused on what he's doing. And when he's focused on what he's doing, he's not thinking about my flowers. And by the time he's done, he's just not able to manage to get them before Shabbos. So it was this realization in my mind to understand him, understand how his brain thinks, understand how he functions. And once I came to that realization, would I say that it was hard for me? Was it difficult work? Then it was easy as pie. Then my whole Friday changed. My whole outlook changed because I realized that's the way that he functions.
So you're saying, Han, that the relationships, the reason why relationships are easy is as long as you can step into the other person's shoes and see things from their perspective. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we're going to be speaking about some other. It's not just about putting yourself in other people's shoes. That there's a lot more to it. But I think that yes, once you get into the rhythm of things, relationships are pretty easy. I would say that once you're in a good rhythm, then
I don't know.
Easy.
Look, I just want to say that maybe you just have an amazing husband, but
I was actually going to say I guess it might be it's more difficult being in a relationship with me than it is with you. That's what it seems.
I think relationships are a lot of hard work. That's what I think.
I'll take it as a compliment.
I think it takes a lot of effort. Maybe I'm just a very easy person.
Right.
But anyways, so my point is, when you have an Eskimo who's living with a Chinese, they can have a very hard time getting along with each other. You know, this one knows everything about ice and igloos, and this one knows about the Sahara Desert and the Gobi Desert, and doesn't understand. They have very little in common. What happens when you have a man and a woman, and you put them together in a room, in a house, in a relationship, in a marriage, throw in some kids, throw in some financial problems, throw in some broken toilets, and you got a recipe for disaster. How are they supposed to work this out? And then, you lock them up in the house for 100 days. Right? You're not allowed to leave the house. My parents have been stuck in South Africa. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary yesterday. Mazel tov to my parents. They practically have stayed home for the past 100 days. Right? Almost 4 months. They're stuck at home. They can't move. And I'm hoping everything's okay. You know what I mean?
Look, you know what? I remember before we got engaged, and I was speaking to some mentors of mine and asking them for advice. You know, how do you know if it's the right person? And I remember somebody saying to me, try to picture yourself on an island alone with him. Could you handle being on an island alone with him? And I remember when we were first married, we used to have this conversation, and I would joke and I would say, if only we could just be on an island alone, you know, without all this other stuff going on and without, you know, all the things that life hurls at us. And we were kind of laughing when this whole thing started, this whole quarantine started, is that, guess what? We've been thrown onto an island alone.
And this is an opportunity instead of a disaster.
And to us, this was the greatest blessing. It was such a blessing. We saw it as a time where we can get to know each other better. We can spend time together. Of course, there's a lot of stuff going on in our house with all the kids and all the classes on Zoom and everything else that's going on. But to us, it's such a treat that we get to spend time alone without distractions. Yet we are seeing that this is not the case for many, many people. There seems to be a pandemic in the breaking of relationships.
This is what we came across. People that we came across in the news. I think it was the New York Times. People in difficult marriages tell me that they feel trapped, they want an escape. They struggle with the stress of uncertainty about the future, anxiously fear the disease, are climbing the walls with boredom, and they're feeling lonely. So that's why we decided to dedicate today's discussion to frustrated to fixated, where some of us are in frustrated relationships, where we're trying to be a mensch to our spouses. We're actually meaning well, but it's falling literally on deaf ears. How can we transition from frustrated to fixated? What can we do to enhance and deepen and bring back the magic into our intimate relationships? And for this, we wanted to share with you an idea which really shifts the paradigm in such a beautiful way. It's an idea which has been circulating through popular culture. It's called the 5 love languages, which is based upon the research of a marriage counselor by the name of Gary Chapman, who studied 12 years of his notes of therapy to be able to put together this pattern that all relationships fall into 5 categories, 5 love languages. And if you and your spouse don't speak the same love language, then your advances will literally fall on deaf ears. Her advances will feel, like water off a duck's back for you. And we need to learn to communicate with each other. Imagine the Eskimo and the Chinese move in together. How on earth can they possibly learn to speak each other's language? The first thing they're going to need to learn is either they're going to decide a language. Either we're talking in Eskimo or we're talking in Chinese, and that's the first part. In our relationships as well, we also need to recognize the pattern of the 5 love languages and to realize that if you are giving your spouse something which is different to what your spouse needs, it's not going to work.
I do want to interject that it's not just for your spouse. These tips that we're going to be speaking about today are really incredible to use on all the relationships in your life. Your children, your siblings, your parents, your friends. It's so important to be able to know what a person wants or needs in order to speak to them, in order to get to them. Because what speaks to me, what's important to me, doesn't speak to you. And I can be giving you what I want, but it's not what you want. And so there's going to be a disconnect. So I think it's so important for us to understand what it is that whoever it is that we're trying to have a relationship with wants, what language speaks to them and speak to them in that language, even if it's the complete opposite to your language.
But Han, you know what's amazing is that what this marriage therapist has discovered in the 5 love languages is actually consistent with an enigmatic teaching of Torah, a verse in Torah which nobody ever really understood until very recently. It says that when the Torah was given, there were 5 languages, 5 voices that were spoken, and the Talmud says that anyone who gladdens a bride and groom, if you dance at a wedding, and you make the bride and groom happy, since there are 5 voices in the Torah about marriage, therefore you will merit the 5 voices in the Torah about Torah. In other words, if you celebrate with the bride and groom, if you make a marriage happy by dancing at the wedding, since they have 5 voices regarding marriage, therefore you will merit Torah, about which it says 5 voices. Nobody had any idea what's going on over here. For 3,000 years, we've never understood what on earth are the 5 voices of marriage, what are the 5 voices of Torah. But we believe that the 5 voices of marriage and the 5 voices of Torah are the keys to a healthy relationship with your spouse, with your children, with the people important to you in your life, and also with God through the Torah. If we can just learn these 5 love languages, we'll be able to romanticize our intimate relationships and romanticize our spiritual relationships as well.
Yeah, so let's get right in. Let's start with the first one.
Today we're only going to cover the first one. Just the first of the 5.
Let's see how much time we have. We're going to start with the first.
We're breaking it into small pieces. So the first of the 5 languages is words of affirmation. It's all about what you say to your spouse. Some of us are very, very sensitive to the words that are spoken to us.
Everyone is. We're all very sensitive to the words that are spoken to
But
us.
some of us are more sensitive than others. Some people, words don't matter to them so much as gifts, for example. Or maybe acts of service might speak to them more. But if your spouse or yourself are someone that your love language, whose love language is words of affirmation, then that is a beautiful way and an easy way to learn how to fill the love tank of your spouse. All that you need to do is to be cognizant of the fact that your words make all of the difference. So if you could just be careful to say words that are compliments, just to speak compliments to your spouse. You look so beautiful.
Yeah, I do want to say that. I think that all the 5 love languages are necessary in a marriage. You need to give your spouse or your whoever it is all of these things in order to have a healthy relationship. They are all necessary. But there are certain ones that are the main one for
Primary.
each person, the primary. For each person.
So I want you to think about it right now. Think about it for a moment about your spouse right now. If you're in a frustrated relationship.
Or think about yourself.
Think about yourself.
Think about yourself. Think about what speaks to you. What means the most to you?
When you say speak to you, I think what you mean is what makes you feel loved.
Yes.
That's the key
Yes.
word here. What is it?
What fills your love tank?
I want you to stop a second. You know, many of us struggle with our relationship with our parents. Just think about this for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you wished you would have received from your parent? What is it that you wished? No, the other one. What is it that you wished?
I think that's the other one.
What is it that you wish your father or mother would have said to you? In that some people need a verbal affirmation from their parent, and that's all that they ever needed. And I've seen it. It's so sad when someone is standing by the deathbed of their father or mother, and they're desperately trying to get what it is that they know they're never going to get. That affirmation, that validation from their parent, it's just not going to come. And as that parent passes away, it is so sad to see the crestfallen emotion within the child, within the adult child. And it's my role as the rabbi to come in and tell them what it is that I feel that they need to hear. If your love language is words of affirmation, then your spouse can easily give that to you if they're only aware.
It's so easy. If they would just know what it is that child needs, if we knew what it was, and we actually did this test with our kids a few years ago, and gave them a bunch of questionnaire to figure out what was their love
We
language.
did a survey on the kids.
I don't know if it stays the same, or I don't know how, but it helps you understand the main need of your child or whoever. And it's so easy. Once you know what it is, it's so easy to give it to them. And that's why I was saying that it's not hard work.
By the way, it's not only little children. It's also big children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But if you just knew that little key piece of information, everything would change.
But I think that it's one thing to speak about what you need. Let's speak a moment about what your spouse needs. Mm-hmm. Let's focus on what you can do instead of what you can expect, right? Let's be practical about moving our relationships from frustrated to fixated secrets to healthy relationships. I want you to pick one person in your life. Just one person. It might be your wife or husband. It might be a parent. It might be a child. It might be a coworker. Mm-hmm. Think of one relationship with which you're frustrated right now, and think about whether that person's love language is being met. Well, today we're only talking about the first of the 5, so we're not going to go into the others. But try to identify if what they need is words of affirmation, if it's validation, and realize that if that's what they need to fill their love tank, how easy it is for you to give them what they need. And in today's modern world that we live in, you don't even need to be in their presence to give it to them. A simple text message
goes a long way.
It could change someone's entire day.
Absolutely.
You could put a sticky note in their lunchbox or a whisper in the ear. Can literally make your husband feel like he's on top of the world. And by the way, if you can't muster the courage to say it to your spouse directly, say it to their mother. Tell their mother how special your spouse is, and then you'll get double credits. So this is our first secret here to healthy relationships. When it comes to the 5 love languages that the Torah tells us, there are 5 languages, 5 voices in marriages. The first one is words of affirmation. It's validation. It's how you speak to the person that you love. And if you want to shift the relationship from the frustration that it's at to the fixated where you wish it would be, stop and measure your words. Are you speaking kindly? Are you saying words that will suffocate or oxidize the soul of the person that you love? If their love language is words of affirmation, it is that simple to give it to them. And just remember this, though. One more thing. Yeah. One more thing is that it's not only our human relationships that are dependent on the 5 love languages, it's also our relationship with God. Remember, the Talmud says, whoever dances at a wedding and gives the 5 voices of love to the married bride and groom will merit the 5 voices which were associated with Torah. God also has 5 languages in the Torah because we need to communicate with God also in each of these 5 love languages. We as Jews turn to God with words of affirmation in our daily prayers.
3 times a day.
I mean, literally from the moment we open our eyes in the morning, you're supposed to put your hands together and say, Modeh Ani, I'm grateful to you, O living and eternal King, for having restored my soul into me.
Words of affirmation are not just speaking nicely. Of course, we should all be speaking nicely to everybody. Words of affirmation is more about recognizing, and I think especially for men, they have the need of feeling like the hero, feeling like the
knight in shining armor.
Yes, absolutely. They need to hear how appreciated they are, how valued they are. And it's so easy to just say those words. I want you to know how valued you are. I want you to know you are such a great provider for our family. You are our hero. You are, and it's so easy to say that. It's so easy to say that, and automatically that love tank fills up. And it's amazing to see the changes, because what happens is that once you fill the other person's love tank, they are so much more ready to fill yours. And it's a vicious cycle. And it's an incredible thing. So the more you get, and if you think it's a little hard for you to say something that you're not so comfortable with, you know what? You're going to get it back so many more times in return.
Which really leads me to the flip side of affirmation, which is criticism. Because if you're criticizing the people that you love, if their love language is words of affirmation, forget about it. You're digging yourself deep into a hole. You know, the knight in shining armor wants to free the damsel in distress. But if the damsel in distress is shouting insults at him from the top of the tower, the dungeon, he's gonna walk off with his tail between his legs, realizing that he's no knight in shining armor. Right. He's a knight in schmutzig armor, right? By giving your spouse, the person who needs that words of affirmation, by being mindful of the words that come out of your mouth, by being mindful of not criticizing, of building them up through your speech, you're filling up their love tank, and you're bringing them up to an emotionally full love tank, to the point where they can just reciprocate and give you their love that you so desperately are looking for.
And that is so perfectly in line with what you were just saying in terms of our relationship with God, is that often I'll hear people say, oh, but I don't even understand the words, or I don't know if I feel like praying. Say the words. Take out a book of Psalms. Join a service at Shul, or just take your own prayer book at home. Say the words. Create that relationship with God, and you will see it coming back to you so many more times over.
I think that the key here is, and what you're saying, Hannah, is that it's not that prayer is so much for you to connect with the message, as much as it is for God to receive what God needs. In other words,
that relationship.
God is seeking a relationship from us. God has made himself vulnerable to us, that he needs our affirmation. God wants us to praise him, because that's how you form relationships. You know, sometimes you compliment your spouse when you don't exactly mean it. Is that right?
I think that's okay.
Okay, that's okay. It's fair to say things to your spouse that you don't exactly mean, because they're nice things. You know, if you're going to be totally authentic, you might be divorced.
You don't always have to say everything you think.
That's right. You don't always have to say.
You
don't always have to say everything that you think. Are you hinting to something specific? Something I need to know. I don't know. Okay.
Not right
In
now.
any event, it's the words of prayer that we recite when we light the Shabbos candles, when we do the grace after meals, when we thank God for the food before we eat, when we wake up in the morning, before we go to sleep at night, 3 times a day that we pray. The purpose of prayer is not so much for our own spirituality, as much as it is for the relationship with God, to be able to give God what God needs, which is that words of affirmation in our relationship with God, just like our relationship with our spouse. And that's the lesson which we wanted to share with you today about
the first of the 5.
The first of the 5 is reclaiming the romance in our relationships, in our human relationships, and reclaiming the romance in our relationship with God as well. The only question is if we have the courage to give God the love that God so desperately needs.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. It's been real. We're going to bid you farewell until next time.
Next week, 2:30?
Not next week.
We might need to take a break for
Not
next
week. But the following week, we'll be back.
Thank you very much for joining us here today, everybody. Shalom, and have a wonderful afternoon. We'd love to hear your feedback to rabbi@jewishgardens.com. Send us an email, rabbi@jewishgardens.com, or Chana, that's CHANA, Chana@jewishgardens.com. Please share this video and like the video. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/JewishGardens. Thank you very much. Over and out. Have a wonderful afternoon.